Yo, what's up, YouTube? So today I want to talk about a topic and a question actually where someone has posed this on the blind threads, and they're asking the question, would you take a highly stressful job if it meant 1 million total comp? And this person works at Snap, so why don't we just go ahead and jump into the post. So he says the job is highly stressful because number one, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of hard work and incredibly challenging. Two, you are not qualified enough. Three, it's also boring, so you're not enjoying the grind. Well, I don't know if 1 and 3 can exist simultaneously. Typically, when you find a challenging, incredibly challenging role, it's probably not going to be that boring because it's going to cause you to problem solve and think outside the box, which, I don't know, for me personally, it's not boring. I think that's actually pretty exciting and something that actually gets me up to go to work, but it is what it is. Let's just go ahead and take the OP at the face value and take these 3 points into consideration. And yeah, would you take a highly stressful job if it meant $1 million TC? Now, there's not a whole lot of other information here, but let's just take it at face value. Me personally, 1 million total comp, even if it's a stressful job with, let's say, long hours and difficult problems, but also it's a bit of a grind, I would say yes. And so I'm gonna vote yes, and let's see what other folks have said. 67% have said yes, 18.4% have said F no, and then 14% said no. All right, so let's just go ahead and dive in. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of additional context here, and typically when people pose these sort of hypothetical situations, you always want to make sure that there's some additional parameters and considerations that can help you make your decision. And I think a question like this, depending on who you ask, you're always going to get different answers. I think one of the biggest factors here is your age and what life stage you're in. I would say that if you just graduated and you're in your early 20s, or you just finished your master's program and you're in your late 20s or early 30s, you're probably someone that can deal with the hours and the stress and the challenge of working on something that is going to give you a lot of stress. But at the end of the day, if you're getting $1 million paycheck every single year, that might be worth it, right? Because you're young, you probably don't have commitments, you don't have family members and things like that, and you can deal with that stress. But if you're someone who, let's say, is married, who has kids, who has a mortgage to pay, and other commitments and other things that you have to deal with outside of your work hours, then it might not be worth it. And so I think depending on who you ask this question, you're going to get varying different answers. But it seems like the majority of the blind community is either in that former working segment, or they just want to pursue the money and get after the dollar bills, as they would say. But for me personally, I think there's also a lot of value in hard work, especially if you get to work on something extremely challenging that's also stressful. That can also just give you a lot of experience, a lot of real world hands-on experience that you can then parlay into your next opportunity. So even in the short term, it might be difficult. You know, something like this might be a role that I would take on for maybe a year, 2 years at most, take what I've learned and then go elsewhere. Now, the one thing I will say is that if you're making $1 million total comp salary, you know, very few companies, very few jobs will actually pay that unless you're, you know, C-suite executive or the president or CFO or whatever. And so if you're sort of used to this compensation, it's going to be very hard, I think, to take a step back and take on something else that is also as rewarding, but may not pay as much. So that's also something to consider. But in the short term, for a year or two, I would probably take on this opportunity because number one, you can earn a lot of money. Number two, you can set yourself up for the future. And number three, taking on these challenges, taking on something new that hasn't been really done before and dealing with that stress, that's something that I can handle. And with $1 million in your pocket, I think there's a lot of things I could do in my free time to help sort of alleviate that stress. So that's what my answer would be. Let me know in the comments down below, guys, what you would do in this situation. Would you take the $1 million compensation for a highly stressful job, or would you stick with what you have now or find something that's a little bit less stressful? Like this video, guys, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.